Hi, welcome back to West Coast Geeks. I'm your host, Joaquin. How we doing, people? So today's video is the first of many of honoring the old ways, and we're going to start off with the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Monster Manual. And with me is a brand new person to the West Coast Geek group, a friend that I've known for a long time, my boy Eric. Say what's up.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up? All right, so not that many people know this, but the Monster Manual was the first official when it came to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. They released this book first, and then came the Player's Handbook, and then I think the DM's Guide, or maybe it was the other way around. But um, when
I
you got
believe it was you were right. It was Player's Handbook, then DM's Guide.
so so Eric got a chance to play. I was only introduced to the Holmes box set, but Eric was you started playing D&D before that, right? You said with your uncle. I remember you telling me a story or
Yeah, I
somebody.
played with my. Well, we actually started. They had the red and blue boxes. I'm not too sure which one we started with, but this was God. It had to have been. I was a little kid, so I'm talking maybe late '70s, early '80s.
No, it
It
had to
was
be
my uncle
late
Javi and my uncle
70s.
Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of what I learned from them was actually second edition,
Yep.
or not second edition. I'm sorry, advanced D&D.
Yeah, so this is first edition. So D&D goes back, like it was first started by Gary Gygax and his friends who played tabletop miniatures, and they just thought it would be cool to incorporate that and start bringing in some rules. And then then it went to chainmail, and
Mm-hmm.
then they took it more seriously, and then they formed a company, and it was TSR, and this is the product, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and so they already had a system in play. So a lot of people, if you were to look at it now, they always introduce the player's handbook first because they want people to get used to the rules and the races and everything. But back then they're like, well, we already have a guideline, especially since they had dropped the um the home starter set, and that included B1 Adventure in Search of the Unknown. They're like, so you got the basic rules, so here's a chance to give the DM some more monsters and for you to, go with it. So this is the cover. I mean, man, this is so iconic. I remember buying this book like in 1980, and I was just amazed. So right here's the first special reference page right here. It's by Gary Gygax, illustrations by David C. Sutherland III, D.A. Trampier, Tom Wham, Gene Wells, and then cover by David C. Sutherland. And so I'm not going to read the whole forward because some of these books, because we are going to go through year for year. So after this, we're going to be doing, I want to say, Against the Giants, because that was the first G1 was like the first module that they introduced outside of a box set. And then I think um, we're going to go through the G's and the D's. Uh, then I think it's Tomb of Horrors, and I think I have to check my notes, but it was also White Plume Mountain. So these were
Yeah,
all like
I do
tournament,
know.
yeah, these were all tournament based back in 1979.
Yeah, they really didn't have a D&D campaigning like that. Wasn't really a thing. It was just, you got together at tournaments and that's what it was.
Yeah, and so quick note before I read the forward here, um, which is still relevant to today, that when D&D started out, they were asking Gary Gygax, they're like, well, what do what's your world? Tell us about your world. And he goes, well, my world is Greyhawk. And they're
Hmm.
like, okay, that sounds cool. Can we play in this world? No, 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 no. That's my world. You need to create your own world, you know? And so they're like, no, but we want to play in your world. So he was kind of rushed into throwing Greyhawk together, and that's why a lot of people will criticize some of the earlier modules. And I always say to myself, like, especially when it comes to G1, I'm like, that's like the first module they came out with, dude. You guys just need to
Yeah.
hold back a second. But here's the foreword written by Mike Carr, September 27, 1977. And this is so relevant today, and we're going to talk about this for a quick moment after it. One final note: as valuable as this volume is within its wealth of information, some DMs may wisely wish to forbid their players from referring to the manual in the midst of an encounter, since it will be considerably more challenging to confront a monster without an instant rundown of its strengths and weaknesses, and besides, a D&D player's true mettle and knowledge will be put to the test. And as even the most casual D&D player knows, that's what this fascinating game is all about. Read on and enjoy. So Eric and I are both DMs, but we're also players. But as a DM, isn't this doesn't this still hold true today?
It does, and I think a lot of it has to do with number one, D&D's been out 40 some odd years now. And so people that play it, especially those players that are our age, they know so much about things, creatures like the classic, the hook horror, the carrion crawler, the rust monster, the beholder. These are monsters that are classic, and they just, when you mention D&D dungeon crawls, they are monsters that you identify with those kind of things. And I think people knowing that, they know to expect going into combat or an encounter with those kinds of creatures.
Yeah. So as a DM, especially at first level, I always remind certain players when they start talking about weaknesses, like, "Oh, it's a troll. We got to get fire." I'm like, "You don't know that."
Exactly. I
Right.
mean,
But to me, like the worst are the power gamers, the ones that go, "Well, we've done 30 damage to this monster or 12 damage, it should be dead."
mhm.
And
That's
that's
why oh,
Go
go ahead,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
So what I usually do, because I have players that they do a lot of damage. They just, it wouldn't be. I mean, if they just run through stuff, it's not any fun. I mean, it's not really a challenge. I don't ever think I've used just straight hit points straight out the stat block. I'm usually adding like, maybe 5, 10 more, depending on where the combat is going and where the party is at. If the party's untouched, I'll give some guys some more hit points, give them something to whack at.
Yeah.
But
You adjust a few stats here and there to
yeah,
make it
you have to
easier.
do that, and you do that the other way around too. If you have a creature that crits somebody for triple their amount of hit points, you're like, maybe you're just gonna take full normal damage instead of being dead, because
Well,
then that kind of sucks.
so currently, right now, Eric is a player in this campaign that I came up with back when I was like in high school. And so we're now like fleshing out the world. And so I'll be doing videos a little bit later. But right now, they're actually going through this homebrew adventure in this homebrew world. And Eric's character got critted by a giant who threw a rock at him.
Stupid giant. Stupid giant.
Okay, so this is the type of fun that you're gonna have playing the game. It's you and a group of friends, or you and some people that you hardly know, and hopefully you can get a couple of good friends out of it. And that's what D&D is all about. All right, so
You mean it's not about devils and demons and
no,
all the
we're not even gonna
satanic
talk. We're not
panic?
even gonna talk about that. It's gonna be a different subject when we get to
Yeah,
that point.
we're gonna do one about mazes and monsters with Mr.
Yeah,
Tom Hanks.
we'll hit all that. So right here you can see the alphabetical table of contents, and then I included what they have on actually printed on the back of the book, over 350 monsters. This book provides a complete alphabetical listing of all monsters encountered in the various works which comprise the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game system. Ooh, that was a long sentence. It is an invaluable aid to players and dungeon masters alike. So see, they don't mind that players look at this because they're kind of like, okay, this is cool. Just don't power game people. And then as you can see, you got the alphabetical table of contents. And on this page, it actually cuts off at U. And we got the prefix where it's paying tribute to past creators. And we finish off with V through Z. And it was just an interesting time. Like when this first came out, people were just like, "What is this? What can I do? what's the right way to play it, and that was like for me that was just fun, just playing it my own version,
Yeah, and
not going by
it's
every rule.
what was so different about this book, like the Monster Manual came out, and AD&D came about. I mean, depends on who you believe, but the common what was agreed upon is between Gygax and Dave Arneson. Gygax kind of wanted his own thing. He didn't want to work with Arneson anymore, so he made AD&D, which was completely different. I mean, he even stated it's a completely different game.
Yeah,
You would not be able to play AD&D with D&D characters and vice versa. So there was kind of that split. And when they made the Monster Manual, when he made the Monster Manual, it was up until that point, wargaming material was usually soft cover, black and white print, whereas the Monster Manual was this new hardcover book, full color artwork on both the front and the back. It's one continuous picture, one continuous painting, and it really set it apart from what was considered wargaming slash role playing, because up until then, role playing really wasn't a big thing. So that's really, for me, that's what it was. It didn't look like a magazine, it was actually a book.
yeah,
And that's what attracted me to it.
yeah. It came out and said, "Here I am." It was like right in your face, like
Yeah.
this,
We got a dragon.
yeah, like
Dragon,
this is
bitches.
happening, people.
Right?
All right, so now we're gonna get into the monsters. So, the important information a DM should know. So we got this is where they're just talking about the term monster is used throughout the book in two monsters. And first and foremost important meaning is to designate any creature encountered hostile or otherwise human, humanoid, or beast. Until encountering party determines what they have come upon, it is a monster. The secondary usage of the term is in the usual sense a horrible or wicked creature of some sort. Thus, a monster is encountered during the course of a dungeon master's expedition, and it is discovered to be evil high priest who just out to be a monster in another sense as well. Note, however, sorry, I need to get some glasses. Note, however, that despite the terminology, humans and such kin as dwarf, elf, gnomes, half elves, and halflings always use the matrix for humans when attacking, even if such humans were encountered as monsters in the course of an adventure. So,
So let me just say one thing I found interesting in that, because the term, this explanatory notes where it says the term monster, that wasn't repeated in any other edition until fifth edition Monster Manual, this little paragraph.
yeah.
And if you notice how when it says such kin as dwarves, elves, gnomes, half elves, and halflings, they do not include the half orc, because the half orc actually wasn't a race until the next year when the player's handbook had come out.
See, this is why I have Eric on, people. He has way more knowledge than I do.
No, it's one of those things you kind of notice, and you're like, well, wait a minute, what happened? Like when I read it, I was like, well, wait, where's half orcs? And then I remembered that they didn't come out until later.
Yep.
So yeah, and I thought that was kind of cool. In the latest fifth edition, they kind of paid homage, repeating this paragraph in the monster manual like that.
I'll have to look that up. I did not know that fun
Yeah,
fact.
the third and fourth edition didn't have it. It wasn't until fifth that they came around and put that little paragraph in there. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, so this is why you should watch the video, people, and continue watching this series. So we got
Font
freak.
of useless knowledge.
Yes, now that was actually really fascinating what you could bring into this video so far. Like most of that you just said, I was like, "What? Really?" So frequency, there, now they have the tables. They still have the tables in
Yeah.
first edition, but this is to help DMs be like, well, how often should they bump into these creatures? Number of appearing, they took that out in like what, fifth edition?
Yeah.
It
See,
took
I'm
out,
not too familiar with third and fourth. I
yeah,
didn't play for that entire time, for probably 15 years, 10, 15 years at
yeah.
least.
I dabbled
But
in third,
yeah,
and I skipped
I heard I
fourth.
wasn't missing much.
Yeah, pretty much. So we got armor class that stayed, even though it's been adjusted. We got movement, hit dice in the layer. I'm not sure if they still have that in fifth edition. I know they have layer abilities, but I think they took out the layer part in the layer. We have treasure type, number of attacks, the damage per attack, special attacks, special defense, magic resistance. So a lot of that has stayed. And then I put on here psionic abilities should be brought back. And
And
this is to
spoken like a true gift.
yep. And we got then they got the intelligence, alignment, size, and psionic ability. And so these are the A's. So Eric brought up, he goes, well, in the monster manual, they didn't have a picture of the aerial servant. And I go, yeah, I found one. I found an image, an art image.
How
And
you gonna see an aerial servant?
well, there you do. You see the wisp of wind in the
That's a
wind.
smoky servant.
Yep. And then, so like when the frequency is very rare, and letting the DMs like you're not going to be encountering these all the time. In fact, even when in the modules that they written back in that the following year, I think maybe a couple had them in there, if one. Now, I have to really
Mhm.
go back and look at that.
I
Um,
believe they were probably in. Well, I'm pretty sure they were in Temple Elemental Evil, just because the elemental
oh,
nodes and
that's right. That's right. But that didn't
yeah,
come out till later, and that wasn't in the village of
no,
Hamlet. So
yeah, that was probably this is probably 5 6 years after this book.
yeah. So and then we have the giant like ant-like creature. What are they called? The annex, ankeg.
And
So
kegs,
ankeg. Yeah.
and kegs, on kegs.
Yeah, these are interesting creatures I like to throw at like first and second level where they're usually just before the sun
It's the
comes up.
second level.
Oh hell yeah, dude!
Man, they do
Mm,
3 to 18 points of damage.
I
That there
know.
you be killing
No,
first levels outright.
it's yeah, but back okay. So I'm gonna give you content. This is first edition. So back in first edition, you
The
ran
P4 made, you're dead.
you ran yourself, and you usually hired henchmen. You know,
Not at first level.
I did. I don't know about you, dude. I always
Well, I
bought a
don't know what kind of
dog and
rich people you were
I,
running. Fancy
hired.
pants, nobles.
I always had enough money to hire one guard, and then I'd pay him as we go on the adventure because we find
Man,
treasure.
I
And
mean, you look at this guy's stat block, number appearing 1 to 6. So you can have on average 3 of these things with AC 2.
I usually put one per character. Out of the vicious
Man,
DM, dude. I was like 10 years old. All right, give a damn
man.
about the characters, about the players. They were all my friends. If we died, they died. But
You dead friends.
yeah, yeah. Now that
Digestive acid. Listen to this. A squirt of digestive acid causes 8 to 32 points of damage. That
yeah,
would kill a third level character. Easy.
yeah. I didn't say I did it all the time, but I do remember one time
Man.
that I want to say they were second, maybe they were third around that level. I threw like one per each player because I had 3 players, and
Oof.
I killed off. They had hired some henchmen, like some guards and stuff, some mercenaries, and the attack killed off like 2 of them, and then they ran.
Hmm.
So, which
I'd run too.
yeah,
Big old mantis looking things.
and then they were upset with me about giving them a hard encounter. So then
Right?
that's when I started learning at the age of 10 about maybe I should be
Oh,
more thoughtful.
discretion, Joaquin.
A little discretion
Discretion.
indeed. So these are fun like creatures. Now they got challenge ratings to help you. Uh, you know,
Yeah, that,
uh,
that took a while for me to learn coming back in the 5th edition. Challenge rating.
nope, to help you out. This is, so right here, you never knew what you'd find in a cave. So we got the giant ants in the picture below. So,
I love that picture. That paladin or that fighter.
yep. And, his teammates like, his
Yeah,
companions.
that little elf's getting eaten. He's done.
Yep. And I was just like, okay, this is happening.
Yep. That fire ain't gonna do nothing.
Mm-mm.
Look
And
at
so,
look at all them ants. That guy needs to run.
and what what I always thought was interesting. Oh man, we're getting some feedback right here.
Oh, you
All right,
good?
I think it's good. Okay, it fixed itself, hopefully. So what I always thought was interesting was the ape, and then they had the carnivorous ape or carnivore ape, and I'm like, they made two different classifications for it. I was like, okay, one's a little bit
Yeah.
more nicer.
Yeah. The carnivorous ape is bigger and in packs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, that's different, you know. So that's the direction they were going back then, and you know, and they're like stronger and very aggressive.
Yeah. Basically Caesar from the new Planet of the Apes.
Yep. I had a druid character who actually tamed an axe beat for a mount. He was
Dude.
a he was a he was a halfling druid,
Yeah.
and so imagine this little halfling that you know that would always that the bird practically almost had to almost like lay down completely so he could get on. But once he
Yeah.
got on, he was like, "Yeah!" I
Yeah.
thought it was
They
so
have
cool.
actually there's a new module in 5th edition where you can buy axe beaks as transports, as mounts.
That's cool. I would allow that.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. It's
It's
pretty
always
cool.
interesting to have different mounts in D&D.
Yeah.
All right, so this is we're starting off with the A. Just a side note, we are not going to go through the whole the whole alphabet tonight. We're just going through this one section. So here's a person's artwork that I actually kept his website on there. I don't know if you can still visit it. Do you if you see it? But it's christopherburdett.com. And I thought this was an interesting image of a baboon.
Looks sad. He's in chains, man.
Yeah, so he's a guardian. He's a guard baboon. So I don't know if his website's still up or still exists, and he's even got a blog spot. But hey, there you go. I'm keeping his name and the artwork in there and giving him credit because I thought that image was tight. So we got baboons. You can encounter badgers. Badgers, the
No,
giant
no, there's no
badger.
honey badger. Honey
There
badger.
isn't no honey
This
badger.
is the honey badger.
Yeah, and so back then, the monsters, he was just trying to come up with everything, and so you see a lot of nature stuff like barracudas. How often are you gonna really run into barracudas? You know,
Well, you go to a Heart concert, you might run into one.
yeah. I don't think you guys get that reference. And then the monster on the bottom, I always thought that was a cool, this giant rhino who I cannot pronounce. A
Oh yeah, Balicatarium.
Balacateria. There you go.
Yeah, it's like a giant rhino with like a giraffe head.
Yeah, so I was just like, okay, this is cool. Dinosaurs, I like it. I thought it was cool. But I
Oh,
remember
wait till we get to dinosaurs.
the first time I encountered a basilisk, um, my character was turned to stone.
Yeah,
And
most everybody's was.
I looked at the DM and I was like, this is not fair. He's like, well, you
Yeah,
failed your save. And back
that's it.
then, the saves back then for first
Dude,
edition
back
were
then were
brutal.
horrible.
It was
And you
so
had
good.
saves. You had like half a dozen saves.
Yeah.
You had, yeah, you had petrification saves. You had
Oh yeah,
death saves. You
we're
had
gonna be going
magic
all into
saves.
that when we get into the Dungeon Master's
Yeah,
Guide and the
that's
Player's
just
Handbook.
nonsense, man.
So
But basilisks are dope. I really like basilisks.
yeah,
They don't fuck around.
yeah, those are great creatures, and they have number appearing 1 to 4. Like
Yeah, can you imagine 4 of those?
yeah, it's just like Jesus. Like we only ran
Six
into
midnight.
one, and so back then, like people were talking about how brutal D&D was back then, and it's like,
Yeah.
yes, it was. There was
It
no
was
joke.
like, yeah. It was like the first EverQuest. You didn't have cons. You didn't have, little trails to show you where to go. Oh, this little rat over here, I'm gonna go kill it. No, it just killed you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
no, it was like
they're no
that.
joke, man.
No, it
And
wasn't.
what another difference that you notice looking at these older stat blocks for these monsters, they don't have a specific amount of hit points. Like nowadays, you'll look at a stat block for 5e and it'll say, okay, this NPC or this monster has 18 hit points.
Yeah,
Here,
they put it
it's
recommended.
random.
It's
They
kind
go
of
by
like
hit dice.
yeah,
So you're rolling, your D8 for your hit dice. You're rolling 6 D8, and you add +1. It could have, 30 hit points. It could have, almost 50. It's very. It makes it more. Gives it more of a random feel.
yeah. So this group of monsters was kind of interesting. Like I said, you got some animals, you got a fish, you got a prehistoric dinosaur, and the basilisk, which I
Bears and
think was before D&D. Was that a D&D creation, or does that go back into like Greek mythology?
basilisk is a mythological creature. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, um, when we touch upon like the ant, the giant ant, I'm pretty sure they created that.
Well, giant ants, they've been around forever. I mean,
No, no,
remember
no, the
the
other
the
one,
movie
the ant,
Them?
the one that squirts out acid. I'm pretty sure that's a
Oh,
D&D
the ant
creation.
keg? Yeah,
Yeah,
that
the ant
might
head.
that might have been one of theirs. I don't remember hearing of it before. But I mean, a lot of this stuff, Gygax and them were big in the mythology, and they pulled a lot of that stuff out. I mean, you'll notice as once we start getting the deities and demigods, and especially like the fiend folio and stuff like that, a lot of that is all different, mythologies from all over the world.
Yep. All right, moving on. So we got a
Oh, look at that
bear. We
bear.
have a black bear, a brown bear, and the you better run at first levels 1 through 3 cave
They
bear.
have a cave troll, a cave bear.
Cave bear. And then we got the giant beaver. And then for the illustration for this page, they chose the giant beetle because they had the bombardier, they had the boring, not boring, but boring beetle, the
Boring.
boring, and the fire beetle. So out of all those three beetles, most people bumped into the fire beetle
Yeah.
when it came into the modules and stuff. And running into like when you were playing like Dungeons and Dragons, you really didn't want to fight bears or giant beavers or
Yeah,
anything like
you
that.
wanted something fantastical that you didn't see at the zoo or anything like that,
Yeah, you're like, this is a fantasy game. I don't want to fight no giant beaver. Like, go, there's a
right?
tree. Go gnaw on that and leave me alone. You
Leave me
know,
alone there.
there's a giant beaver. And so the beetles were interesting. Like the fire beetles, you could cut out their eyes or their
Yeah,
glands,
the
something like
eyes
that.
glowed.
Yeah, their eyes glowed for a little bit afterwards. So
And what's so funny about that is you saw that in a whole bunch of especially when it came to online role playing games. Once you get like the Ultima and kind of that kind of that thing of having the eyes be a source of light was carried over into so many other gaming systems.
yeah,
Again, it shows how D&D kind of set the
set the tone.
set the standard.
No, no, these are all like. So this is like so as when you get the first of all, when you get the monster manual, you're as a kid or whenever as a player as a DM, and you're just looking through that, and there's just so much cool stuff to go through, and so that's why we're taking our time on each page. So to give
Like the
you,
J.C. Penney toy catalog during Christmas.
oh hell yeah, dude, that goes way back. Nowadays, people are like, what? And now
Oh,
we
here
get
it
to a
is.
few iconic monsters: the Beholder, the Black Pudding, and the Blink Dog. Now, when I told Eric, you know, what the first video that we're going to be doing and the series, I said, look, when we get to certain creatures, we're going to be breaking off like a video just on those creatures. And he goes, oh, we're going to do something on the Beholder? I'm like, no, because back then in first edition, they didn't do much with the Beholder. A couple of Dragon magazines, but they didn't give out that
Yeah,
much
I mean,
information.
and it's one of the original creations for D&D. It was created by what's his name? Kuntz. I forget his name, but one of the guys' brothers had drawn like just a little sketch of it, and Gygax saw it. He's like, "This is a great monster. We're gonna put it in a thing," and it just ended up as just some random monster. And there's one type in this monster manual,
Yep.
and now we are 40 some odd years later, and there's a dozen different types of beholders, whole modules have been built after these monsters. It's really
They've
cool.
gotten their own book back
Yeah.
in, yeah, so it's just, I wish they would bring back that series. I know we're jumping
Which
around on
one?
stuff. So what they did was they would take a book like the Beholders, and then they made like three
Oh
modules.
yes, that was second AD&D.
Yeah, and they
Those
did the
books
same
were
thing
great.
with
The supplement books,
yeah, and then they did the same thing with like the Sogwin. I can't. I was
the
messing up
Hogwins.
the
Yeah,
Hogwins. They
yeah,
did
the
something
little
with
mer
that, and then
people.
they created like adventures for that, and then they did the Mind Flayers. So they took three different
Yep,
unique creatures, gave you a book that gave you the history, and
yep,
then they made adventures to go with it. I was like,
yeah.
man, they need to do that again at fifth edition, man.
It's really cool. Fifth edition is, I mean, fifth edition. Don't get me wrong, is great. It actually pulled me back into D&D because I was pretty much done. Like
Yeah,
I left D&D like mid '90s, and I had gone back like late like 99 2000. I moved back down to California when my friends were still playing. I played around with it for about a year, but then I came back to Vegas, and I didn't do anything for probably 15 years. Like I did no D&D, nothing. And it was fifth edition. Martin actually wanted to run an adventure, so I played that, and I liked the flow. It reminded me a lot of AD&D.
yeah,
Like fifth edition is done really well, but in the supplement department, it doesn't have as much in the way of supplements as second edition AD&D did, or
yeah.
even a regular AD&D.
No, no,
So
no.
that's one thing. Yeah, I mean,
That's a
but there
big
is a lot of
criticism of, but
there's a ton of player content though. There's a ton of player content out, and I think that's one of the things that D&D or TSR in general had a problem. They were spreading themselves too thin. So I think that's kind of why you don't see that now. I mean, that's just my opinion.
yeah,
But yeah, supplement books would be great for that kind of stuff. They had one for all the player races. It was those were really good books. But I digress.
yeah. So, so like when you met a beholder, like this is to show you how powerful it was and still is. It's like very rare. Number of appearing, one. Like they're telling the
Yeah,
DM, like, do not throw multiple beholders. And
yeah.
the other thing was there were random charts back in first edition where you could just at level one, you're in the woods and the DM would roll and be like, and you hear this rumbling through the forest, through the
Right.
bushes, and up pops up this giant ball or spear with a mouth and a one angry looking eyes and other, eyes, tentacles,
Ten
all
tentacles with
staring
eyes.
at
Yep.
you. What do you do?
You run.
You're like, what? Like, what is
Why,
this?
you fools?
Yeah, you're like, what is this? And the DM's like, mm.
Oh, what is
And
it?
then the creature speaks, and
Yeah,
and usually it will like be sinister and be like, because it's like lawful evil.
yeah.
My
They're
DM, when the
evil.
first time I introduced, this is how I was pretty much, I was trying to remember how I was introduced to the Beholder. He was like, I will let one of you live because I'm hungry. The others can go. And so,
Because I'm hungry.
I'm like looking at my friends because there were three of us and we're like all looking at each other. And
Trip the last one. Let's go.
they were like, well, should we attack it? And then this is when the DM, who was my friend's older brother, his name was Jeff because my friend was Joey. This is when he started introducing to which a lot of DMs don't really enforce but should. He goes, the beholder, and that's what he gave the name, the beholder, looks at you and says, should you attack me? And then we're like, wait, what? He, he why is he hearing that? He's like, you're in game. You guys are right in front of the
Yeah,
beholder and you're saying this.
yeah. There's no OOC in the middle of a
Yeah.
roleplay session.
So then he goes, all right, and then he chose like me. And then I had to make a charm person and actually made that. And then once he did that, then it was on. And then we all
Yeah,
died.
yeah. I mean, these things, and it's so funny because for it's an original D&D creature. And the original stat block for this, I mean, if you read through it, it's so complicated. I mean, right here where it says the body of the monster can withstand 2/3 of its total damage potential, while the greater central eye can withstand 1/3 of its total. I.e., a beholder with 45 hit points can withstand 30 hit points of damage to its body before being killed. The 11th eye can withstand 15 points before ceasing to function. Eye stalks take from 8 to 12 hit points each before being lost. Body of beholder represents 75% of potential hit area. Central eye and the eye stalks 10% each, and 10% small eyes are 5%. I mean, that's how difficult like these creatures were. I mean, that's when you're considering attacking this thing, you're like, what do I do? Do I attack the body? Do I attack an eye? And it's all broken down in the percentages and how many hit points
Yeah,
each can withstand. It's really a complicated encounter if you really think about it. And
yeah,
like you said, if you have the bad luck or the sadistic DM that runs you into one of these at first level, you're kind of screwed. I mean, you
I don't
run.
think
That's
I don't
it.
think we were first level. I think we were like third or fourth around there. And
Still,
but it was just a
still,
random encounter that
yeah.
so to this day, I'm kind of glad that so back then they did allow you to attack certain things, but now they've
Hmm.
gone away from that,
Yeah,
and I'm glad
they've
because I had
generalized combat a lot.
yeah, let's say attacking like a Hydra, you could be like, well, I attack this one head, there are certain things like that, but then you have players like, well, I shoot an arrow at his eye, and
Low
some
shot,
of these
minus 10 to hit.
players, I'm like, experienced players, I'm like. No, you can't do that. But why can't I blind them that way? I go, do you really want to break this down to you want to
Yeah.
shoot? You want to
I mean, the
shoot?
thing has 11 eyes. You're not going to blind him
Well, it
anytime
wasn't
soon.
even about a beholder. It's just a creature in general. And I'm like,
Yeah.
combat
Well,
is
I mean,
already slow enough. Imagine now
yeah.
we gotta roll to see
Well,
does it
I
hit
mean,
you in
that
the
was.
chest? Does it do so much damage now you can't use your arm? Or God forbid, if you are allowed to blind a creature, could you imagine what kobolds and gnolls are going to be able to do to you in a group?
Hmm.
So I was
Well,
like,
and
no,
that's where GM discretion comes in, or DM discretion comes in. I mean, sure, you okay? Like the old, what was it? Second AD&D had the called shot, minus 10 to hit. Sure, you want to aim for his eye, minus 10 to hit, one attack.
yeah, no. To me, I was just like, no, no, no. Our combat, let's just keep them flowing. I didn't want to
Yeah,
go into that, but the beholder was brutal. Charm
yeah.
person, charm
Death
monster,
Ray,
sleep, telekinesis, flesh to
Death
stone.
Ray,
Death ray was brutal. Cause
Death Ray
serious
was
wounds.
stupid.
Disintegrate.
Yeah,
And it can do all of these. And
yeah.
it's just like, okay, you get one attack and you're gonna die if it hits you with something. So that was the Beholder and the beginning of a unique race that was gonna be an iconic monster.
A
So
hateful, aggressive, and avaricious creature. Suitably Xanathar.
pretty much, right? Yeah. Someday.
But
So
with his pet goldfish.
yeah, Sildagar. So
Yep.
I don't want to take anything away from the other creatures out here because they're like, hey, we're unique too. They've
Yeah,
got
right.
introduction to the black pudding and
Oh, one of
and the
my
oaths.
favorites.
Yeah, and this is where like if it got hit with a lightning bolt, doesn't it split?
Yes. Electricity. And I think when it goes down to it, well, in fifth edition, I love using these creatures against my current group. They hate it.
Yeah.
They are paranoid in a dungeon of puddings, jellies, and ochres. They between them and mimics, it's great. But yeah,
Yeah.
these after taking a certain amount of damage, they split, they multiply, they decompose metal. They're great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
if
that was
chopped
the
or
brutal
struck, the
thing
monster is
back
broken
then.
into two or more parts. Cold does not affect it. Fire causes normal damage. Yeah, they're great monsters.
You know. So we have those, and then last but not least, the Blink Dog, dude. That
Oh,
was a
blue
cool
doggy.
concept. You got these
Yeah.
friendly dogs that are, if they that can, come out and help you and befriend you for a small part of an adventure.
Yep.
Later on, as you got higher levels, you could actually befriend and tame a blink dog, and
Nightcrawler puppies.
yep, and so they were pretty cool creatures, and they're
Yeah, I
still
like
all these
them.
creatures are still in fifth edition. All right,
Are they?
mm-hmm. All three of
I
them:
have
blink
not seen the
dog,
Blink
black
Log.
critic.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I'm pretty sure
I
they have the
love a
blink
Blink
dog in the
Dog.
monster manual in fifth edition.
Oh man, it's
I haven't
on.
used it, but have let me see. So next we have the wild boar, giant boar, warthog. I thought I'd give them a nice picture to find because they don't get that much love. I mean, again,
What? No Pumbaa?
they don't. Again, most people like now. If I want to do a boar, it's because the orcs are riding it or hobgoblins are riding them.
Right. They're more as a mount now than anything.
Yeah, to make
Thanks
more
to
vicious.
GW.
Or a giant boar for level one in the wilderness. It's pretty brutal.
Mhm.
Um, Next we have is the brain mole, and this is what I was talking about the psychic abilities. This
Yeah.
edition has not addressed psionics yet. They keep throwing it
No.
out there in the unearthly arcania, like, "Hey, we're gonna test out this," and I don't know what it is. They really don't want to do a class. Like nothing has officially come out, like in like Tasha's Cauldron or Venator's Guide to Everything. While
I've
some
never seen
creatures
anything
have
about the Brain Mole.
some things they have some abilities that are psionic, but they really didn't commit to like first edition did with psionic. So
No, I think that the closest they've come to is some of the magic abilities they give to the Githzeri and the Githyanki in the new Mordenkainen's magnificent tome or whatever. Tome
yeah,
of Tome of Foes, I think it
and
is. I forget the name of it.
and the mind
But yeah,
flayer has a psychic blast still. But I'm
correct.
just
It's
talking
called
about
Psychic Blast, but it's just like an ability. It's not an
yeah,
actual like it's not its whole class and everything like it used to be.
yeah. So they're still figuring that out. But brain moles, these are little small psychic creatures. Um,
I have a
to this
question.
day, yeah, go ahead.
Do you remember where like the Sonic ability, the 121 point attack? Like, do you remember that was so complicated? I don't remember exactly how it worked. Like each creature had like a psychic defense.
Yeah, there
If
was
you were
like
psychic
Tower of like
capable,
Iron Will. Like when we get to the player's
yeah,
handbook,
you had to have different ability. What were they called? Disciplines.
yeah, you had to have, and you had to have access to that defense.
Yeah,
So
you
you
had
had to
to
roll
actually be
really
a psionic.
high and get certain defenses. Like they had like Mind Shield or Mind Blank and
Yeah,
Ego
it
and,
was
and all
really
this other
weird.
stuff. Yeah, we'll get into that when we get to the player's handbook.
Yeah,
So
because
here's a
that's
creature that I think they should bring back in fifth edition, which will
the
be.
brownie's not in fifth edition.
I don't think they have. I don't think they have brownies.
Oh man, I love a brownie, and
So
these guys are cool too.
yeah, they're distant relatives of the halflings, and they have, look at what they're able to do.
Oh, they're
Protection from
gross, dude.
evil, ventriloquism, dancing light, continued light, mirror image, 3 images, confusion, and dimension door.
All once per day.
Yeah, they
Yeah, these
carry a
guys
little
are
short sword. Like these are the Fey folks that would come and help you because they're lawful good. So if you were in the forest and evil orcs or other creatures were attacking, and the DM goes, "Well, I don't want to, do a TPK." For those of you who are new, total party kill. That would be like, and in the middle of the battle, just before all is lost, you see these little figures enter, and they start casting these spells and confusion and dimension door, and they grab you and they save you, and then the DM would usually be like, "Now you owe these brownies a favor." you know.
Yeah, I find it funny that they made these creatures lawful good though. They've always been kind of more. I've always imagined them more as like a chaotic kind of.
Yeah, but these are supposed to be the good defenders of the Fey world. So, and then
Yeah,
the buffalo.
the
Um,
buffalo, Tatanka.
Tatanka. I mean, I remember one time that I did have a tribe of goblins who rode buffaloes.
Oh my god!
Because
Oh, the poor
I was
buffalo.
like, my party was like almost, they were like 8th to 10th level in that range. And
Dude, their
so,
head is armor class 3.
yeah, and so I was like, well, how do I make goblins more interesting? I go, I'll put them on big mounts. And I was going through the player's handbook. I was like, oh, buffaloes.
Right?
Yes. I'm gonna have
You
them
know what I'm
trample
also
them.
noticing in these stat blocks?
Yeah.
Do you remember Thaco?
Yeah.
There's no Thaco in any of these. So that must have come later then.
I
Player's
think
Handbook or
so.
even DM's Guide?
I think it came in the player's handbook.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't, Thaco was to hit AC 0.
Yep.
Basically, it was kind of like an indicator of how powerful a monster was.
Yeah, I think they were still they I think they introduced that in the starter set.
Did they
The
really?
Southern
Okay.
Home. I'm pretty sure they did. So they didn't put Thaco to hit into this one right here because they just figured you would have that anyway. So
Yeah.
you would just
Yeah,
rest.
I thought that was interesting that they I didn't see it and I was like, wait a minute, when did that come out?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
So I was just like, okay, so because then you had to look at their hit dice and that was their level. Like we're gonna get into all
Yeah.
that craziness. Ah, bugbears were
Oh,
almost
here we
called
go.
boogie bears. Did you know that? Did you hear about
No,
that?
I did not.
Yeah, bugbears were almost called boogie bears, and then whatever, because then they got switched to
Because I think
bugbear.
they're Norse mythology, no?
I don't know where they came from, but all I know is that they were almost called boogie bears,
That's
and they
funny.
they switched it to bugbear. And every player who ever enters D&D goes, excuse me, they go, why are they called bugbears? Like, there's nothing insect about them, and they don't look
Yeah.
like a bear. I was like, well, they're furry. like,
Bugaboos, right?
like it would have been better if they would have called them brug bears, BR
Bugbears.
brug bear, something where it's just like different. It's just,
Yeah,
but then whatever, they're bugbears, and that's what they are. And
right. I love
these,
that they made them player characters. They are some sick player characters, man. They have some
they
really
do.
cool abilities. And one thing I love about this artwork, if you look on the right under the initial stat block, you have the little bugbear in the doorway looking thing. And then on the bottom, this guy's getting smacked in the face.
Yes, with some mace.
In the motherfucking face. That guy's not waking up.
Yep,
Yeah, that guy's just he's going for the dirt nap.
he
That's
is.
just a gnarly thing. And that bugbear's like, whatever. And I got a shiv.
Yep.
Say something.
And this is why my video is not made for kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. NFSW
Yep.
or NSFW. Yeah, that's right. I don't know.
All the
All these
terms.
letters.
So the bugbears are your typical after you usually will bump into on level one, you'll bump into some bugbears or one bugbear who's like the chief of over some goblins. Like they don't try to
Hmm.
throw in fifth edition a lot of bugbears at you at first level because they are
No, the
brutal.
hobgoblin kind of took that role.
Yeah. And so bugbears have a long history in D&D and they're not going nowhere. I mean, whatever edition they make, they're always going to be there.
Yeah. It's a
Same
it's a
thing.
standard classic D&D monster.
Yep. Same thing with the next creature, which is the bullet. And the bullet
Oh, the bullet.
in the Return to the Keep on the Borderland, they included a bullet in there. And we're talking, this is for like first level characters because they
Yeah.
expected you to run.
The land shark.
Yep. Like this is brutal. Like you do not want any part of this. Even at mid level, you don't want no part of this.
No. This is what you let when you get wizards go wild.
Yeah, I mean, it does 3 to 8, and then its bite is 4 to 48 damage.
Yeah. 3 attacks, 4 to 40. That's 4d12.
Yeah,
4d12.
and it jumps up in the air, and then they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, if you kill this, you can make a +1 to +3 shield." I was like,
Dude,
"Okay."
from the front, the armor class is -2.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad they got away from all that because that's just too much to keep
Yeah.
track of.
And you
But
only ever run into one at a time.
yeah, thank God. No, they put like number 1 or 2, ten
Well, two
percent
is,
chance.
yeah, it's like a 10% chance that you're
You
running into
you
like a
found
mating
a
pair.
mating pair, and now you're
Yeah.
really in trouble.
Forget
So
all
yeah,
that.
bullets, those were cool. Um, but now we're getting into the bull, and so what I like what they did in like fifth edition, they took all the animals and they just threw them in the back. They're like, look,
Yes, I
yeah,
do like that. It made it much easier to deal with. your typical, regular everyday Earth animals,
Yeah,
and set that aside from the fantastical,
creatures and beasts.
creatures and monsters that you want to see in D&D. Ain't got no time for no giant beaver or wild camels.
Speaking of which, here we go. We got the
Blue
wild
cow.
camel. Look at that. Even wild camel cattle was a monster. Look at that cow.
Look at that cow. That's
Moo.
a that's a tasty burger.
That is a monster. Here's another iconic D&D
Oh,
monster, the carrion crawler.
I love the carrion crawler. I love
Dude,
him. I put him in my first module. He's great.
yeah, these are great first
Paralyzed.
level encounters. Um, and we're not talking about the wild camel. Um,
No, yeah, we do that guy. He's in the back of the book, like the fifth edition,
yeah, like they even like there is no wild cattle. Now they just have a cow.
right?
And
Blue.
yeah, these are iconic. You're gonna bump into carrion crawlers throughout your course of playing Dungeons and Dragons. If you play a lot of
Yeah.
modules and not homebrew, you're gonna bump
Yep.
into these. The
Giant corpse eating centipedes, basically.
yeah, pretty much. And they're cool. They make it into video games.
Oh yeah.
The next creature is a definite D&D
Oh, another
invention.
one.
Yep,
The Catablepus.
the Catoblesis. This nightmare creature is loathsome beyond description and has no redeeming
No
features.
redeeming features. This creature
Here's the
sucks.
thing, yeah, they put it as neutral. So, and
Yeah.
with proper role playing or charm monster spells and stuff like that, you could make this your friend.
Yeah. A stinky giant buffalo with a long neck
But its
and
gaze
warthog
causes
head.
look, what is the special attack? Gaze causes death. The gaze is
I
equal
forgot
to
about that.
the death ray extending 6 feet from the eyes, even into the astral and ethereal planes.
Yeah, fuck all that nonsense.
Complete surprise, a 2 on a 6 means one of the party encountered the monster has met its gaze. Otherwise, the
Oh,
very weak neck has only 25% chance of raising its head high enough to use its eyes. If both parties follow the quick movement, or if the shot shambling along in pursuit of prey, there's a 10% chance per melee round that the neck raising the head significantly high to fix its gaze. A fleeing victim, even with his eyes averted, is subject to the deadly effect of the countless eyes.
Jesus. I
Although
did,
there
did
is although there is a saving throw. So even if you're not looking at it, the fact that it's
yeah.
looking at you, it could still kill you with its death
Well,
gaze.
it says any creature which meets this gaze dies without any chance to save itself. No save.
No, it
Okay,
says
what do I
there is
gotta
a
roll?
save.
Nothing,
No,
you're
it says
dead.
although there is a saving throw. You do get a saving throw. You get a saving throw against the death ray. So
No, the second sentence. Right after it says, even into astral and ethereal planes, any creature which meets this gaze dies without any chance to save itself.
oh yeah, okay, you're right. So if you're
That's
running
nonsense.
and you're not looking at it, you
Yeah,
get a
if you're
save.
running away, you get the save. Holy crap.
Dude, I gotta put this in our campaign that we're
You better
playing.
not. Michael's gonna be mad he got rid of his blind character. Man, that's some nonsense.
That is some nonsense. I want to see this creature back. This creature's making it in. I don't know where, but
No,
there will be a chance for you to encounter
stop his flimsy neck. Take
this.
that, you stupid giraffe.
I don't even know what the hell this is. But
Oh
this
my
creature is
goodness.
no joke. I think I've
Yeah,
only encountered it once as a
I've
player.
never encountered. I just like the name because it sounds like
Yeah.
Catablepus.
Um,
Catablepus.
as a DM, maybe I played it once just because, it
Yeah,
was
this is
funny.
nonsense. I'm gonna see if they have a fifth edition stat block for this thing. I might throw it in just
Yeah.
to be a dick.
And now we get to some more iconic
Oh,
creatures.
here we go.
And we're
Some
talking about the
mythological.
centipede. No, we all know what we're talking about. I highlighted it, the chimera. But before we get there, let's give all the other creatures their due before we start talking about that. So the centaur did not become a playable race unless your DM
Amazing.
allowed it until
Amazing.
like third edition, I want to say. Third
Yeah.
edition, they were like, all right, we started dabbling with it. But first
Yeah.
edition,
Fine.
they're like, yeah, that was exactly it.
Fine. Stop
Fine.
sending emails. We'll add this stupid creature.
Yeah.
Although they're great. I love them.
The centaurs are cool.
Yeah.
The only problem with centaurs is that I know in fifth edition they did drop them down to medium size. They had them large,
They
and
did,
they
which it
really
makes
needed
it
to do
easier to
that
deal with,
because going into dungeons would already be hard enough, and
right?
then
Clickety clockety,
yeah.
disadvantage on stealth rolls.
hmm And so that's when you get hooves of silence. You're like, I got
You
elven
wrap your
cloak and
shoes in
boots.
pillows,
I have to I have to buy 2 pairs of elven cloak and boots.
right? What? 2 pairs of Elvin boots.
That's how I get
Oh
rid
my
of that,
goodness.
DM.
Yeah.
Haha.
I like them apples.
Yep. So you got the centaur, mythical creatures. These first appeared in Greek mythology, I believe. That's how
Yeah.
far they go back, and they might even go back farther before that because
Yeah, I don't
in
know if they were Mesopotamia or any of those
but
Minos.
they did have like horse bearing creatures images back then. I mean that,
True.
but they didn't call them centaurs though.
What is the name of that gate?
Mm.
Uh, I forget the Pharos. I can't remember, but yeah, they had a lot of that whole Mediterranean area. Their mythology shared a lot of the same creatures.
Yep. So centaurs, great creatures. Usually helps you out. Uh, but as a tribe, they still kind of looked out for the forest and what's in it for us. Like we're just not gonna throw our neck out there to help you fight a
Yeah,
war
unless
band of goblins. Unless
yeah,
this war band of goblins is camped out at the very beginning of our forest and is
they're
now
generally not evil,
chopping it down because they're gonna make siege weapons to go attack a castle. Then they'll be like, "Yeah, can you help us?" That
right?
type of thing.
They're not usually evil unless you're GW, and then they throw you into chaos.
Pretty much. So next up is another iconic first level creature that you will bump into are the giant centipedes. Not so much now, but every now and then you'll bump into
And
these.
bug
Usually these are like the herd or swarm creatures that, as a DM that you want to make sure
worms are so great.
you want to have at least one to maybe one and a half per party member. So like like if you only had 3 people in your party, you'd want to throw at least four just to make it more interesting because
Just
otherwise
throw a
they're just gonna
dozen of these things, man. They got 3 hit points each. Just throw a dozen at them.
yeah. Okay, so
Take
yeah, and
that.
here's another one. Oh, I should introduce this too. The
What is this?
cerebral parasite. These creatures are
Oh,
visible to the human eye and can only be detected by psychically by means of careful examination of a person's aura. Oh, that's not visible. Yeah, I couldn't read that part. Okay, so yeah, it can only be removed by cure disease spell. So
but here's the thing: these things are made specifically for psionic capable
yes,
creatures. So
yeah,
without psionic, if your creature doesn't have psionics, they're just a bunch of fleas.
yep. They're not gonna do anything to you. So that's why they're
Yeah,
not included. All right, now we're getting
well,
to the star
the
of this
chimera.
page, the Chimera. All right, this I remember the first time we faced this. Um, again, we lost half our party and ran. What was your
As it
first
should be.
experience that you can remember as a player?
As a chimera, oddly enough, I don't know if I've ever run. My first creature that I ever ran into playing D&D was when my uncles were teaching me how to play, and we ran into a I forgot the name. It should be under C. It's the three-headed dog, Cerebus.
Really? Wow, that
Yeah,
doesn't
that
even.
was the first multi-headed creature, but chimera, I really don't recall coming up. It may have been. I mean, I played so many games over so many years, but not one particular instance sticks out
Yeah,
with the kind concerning a chimera.
the chimeras are good mid-range once you're like 5 to 8th level.
Hmm.
Um, they're usually you're gonna encounter them in like the mountain regions and stuff,
Yeah,
and they're very territorial. Some high-level mages. will like charm them and keep them as pets, and
Mm-hmm. They guard treasures.
they
They're
guard.
also guardians.
Yeah, they're guardians. They're good guardians. And they just look cool. I mean, that's why I found this art image, and I was like, this is what D&D is about, you know. Even though they gave it a
Yeah,
snake tail.
these are another one of those classic D&D. I mean, granted, it's not a Dungeons and Dragons created. It's not their creation, but it's still one of those classic character or monsters that you run into from time to time.
Yep. Which always, should have a good fight and a good story. Okay. The cockatrice, before we get
Oh
to
yeah.
the cockatrice is an annoying mid-level creature because if it touches you, you turn to stone. Of course, you're gonna get your saving throws, but um, this has always made it in every edition, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And these are brutal creatures. Yeah, you get to kill them.
Hmm.
They go down pretty quick, if a party concentrates on them. Most DMs usually only put like one or two, maybe three at the most, because they don't want the whole party getting turned to stone and then their players getting
Right.
pissed at them.
You're just
Uh,
gonna turn into a stone garden.
yeah, pretty much. The next is a creature that is very rarely encountered. Again, I remember one encountering of a Quaddle, but as a DM, I remember I threw it at this group that was somewhat new, and I had this ranger character,
Hmm.
and he had a habit of shooting monsters first. So the Quaddle came down to help them, and before I could even finish the statement, he goes, "I draw my arrow and shoot him." I'm like, what? And so then we roll initiative. The Quaddle gets to go first. He plane shifts the entire group, and he brings him into this other plane. He's like, "What are you doing?" And so then when it came to the ranger's turn, he was just he goes, "I lower my bow," like
I lower my bow.
like these creatures have always at each edition gained more and more power. And these are the type of creatures as a DM you can give them additional powers or take away what they have
Yeah,
and
I mean
substitute
they're
your
pretty
own.
much demigod status in some places.
Yeah, so these are creatures that are meant to help your player characters. They usually give them quests or help them with a riddle or something. They're not they don't 9 times out of 10 they will not go with you on an adventure unless
No.
there is something really important and it will help you fight the final boss. If the DM thinks that you just need that extra push of power to get
Yeah.
through this. And now we get to the giant crab.
Stupid
Um,
crabs.
Giant crab's fun. I mean, especially against like first level characters. They're at the
Right?
riverbed, and they see this giant like rock, and this is how they can cross the river because there are rocks, and then there's a giant rock in the middle of the river that's motionless and has its back turned and everything, and it's usually like buried mostly underneath the dirt, so it just has a shell on top. And so the parties, this is what I did. They would
Yeah.
jump on there, and then I'd be like, "Roll
Or
initiative." I'm like, "What?" They're
or
like,
bears.
"They're like," and now you realize that what you jumped on is moving, and these giant claws appear above the water line, and you're like,
Mm.
"What?" A giant crab. It's like, "What?" And then,
Yeah. Stupid claws.
yep. And so, even though it's like one, they're still fun to throw at first level characters and stuff. And if you're playing like an underwater adventure and it's mid level, usually throw like 3 to 6. And then after they lose like
Three to
half their
six.
number, yeah, if you're mid
Man,
level, like
these things are three hit
five to
die
eight,
creatures. These things are ruthless. Look at the
well,
damage. Two to
but
eight, 2 to 8 each turn. 2d4 damage.
yeah, 2 to 8, 2 attacks.
AC 3.
Here's
Those things are
another
monsters.
here's another iconic monster in D&D that makes it into a few adventures. Is the I wouldn't say actually I don't want to say iconic because I really want to hold that. This is a monster that you will bump into every now and then. The giant crayfish.
Yeah,
Going to a river.
another water roach.
Yep. Like boom, giant crayfish. Another chance to earn
Dude,
XP
2 to
creature.
12 damage.
Yeah, they don't.
Twice. And 4+4 hit die.
Yeah, for back then, that was pretty brutal.
Man, this is some Sinbad the Sailor shit. Yeah, these guys are nuts.
Yep.
Look at that. Oh, these are freshwater. Okay, maybe not Sinbad.
Yeah. And then they get to hide. And then
Yeah,
we got the lonely crocodile. We got the normal crocodile, which was number appearing 3 to 24. I
3 to
don't care what
24. What is it?
level you are.
Temple of Doom,
24 crocodile is good. But
right?
your wither would just be like, depending on what level, I fireball them. All right, next,
Yeah,
let's just go on. And then the giant crocodile,
yeah.
which is
Those are no
very
fools.
rare. Those things were, 3 to 18, 2 to 20. They did
30
some.
feet long.
Yep.
3 to 18 damage. 2d10 damage. 3d6. 2 attacks.
Yeah, those were, and we're judging this on, first level. So like, first
Yeah, no,
edition,
that's not
your
somebody you'd want to hang
wizard
out with.
rolled like a D4 for hit points. Your
Yeah,
thief was like a D6.
D6. Yep,
The cleric was a D8 with the druid. The
yep,
fighters and paladins were D10s.
yep. They didn't come out. I think D10 was the highest until Unearthed Arcana came out with the Barbarian, and that
Which
was
is
huge because that
D12.
was a D12. Yeah, everybody was like, "I'm running the Barbarian."
Yep.
D12 hit die, but yeah, normally, like I said, wizards and loot. What was the other one that was a D4? I thought there was another one. I can't remember. Maybe it was only the wizards that were D4.
Well, back then they also did. They broke off illusionists as a separate class.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah,
Um,
that's right because of the
the
gnomes.
rogue was a D6. The
Yeah,
monk I want to say was a D6.
yeah. I don't think the monk was that high either.
No.
Clerics were D8. Druids were D8. I think that was it.
Yep. All
Yeah.
right. Moving
But
on
yeah,
to.
crocodiles, man, that's rough.
Yeah, I still like throwing crocodiles at people. At first,
And
like
they
the
used
first
to
and
have,
third.
does this have, oh no, they don't have the swallow whole rule either. The
Yeah.
frogs had that. I knew frogs had that.
All right. So we are now coming up to the wrap up. Next video will be devoted to demons. What monster would you like to see in the
Oh,
5th edition that we just described here? Leave it in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you. We appreciate it. Hit the like button. Leave a comment below. What monster would you play? Because now they've opened it up
ooh.
to everything in 5th edition practically.
Pretty much, yeah. What? Okay, so you answer these. What monster from AD&D would you like to see? But well, we've only covered A, B, and C, but overall, you have a pretty good
I
idea of
would
what
like to
monsters
see
we're
that
in.
Death Ray monster. If that's not in
Oh,
5th
that dude, the
edition,
Catablepus? No,
yeah, dude, I would love to
I'll have to
see
check all
that.
that.
I
Because
would.
I don't know if it might. I know it made it in the second AD&D because I remember the picture was weird. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah,
And there was one.
and I
Remember when
think
they
it was
did
in
second
third too.
AD&D? Yeah, it was a 3-ring binder. Remember that?
Yep, I remember all that.
Yeah, when they made the monster manual and they just sold supplements.
Yep.
Okay, so you want the Catablepus back? I would like to see. Let's see, A, B's, or C's.
Hmm.
Which one? I was surprised. I didn't realize the Blink Dog was back. Maybe the Brownie.
Yeah.
I don't think the Brownie is back.
No,
I'll have
because
to check on that. I mean, it may be in like some phase substitute
yeah.
or whatever, but yeah, Brownies would be cool to see back. What monster race would you play?
So back then, if we were just like we'll for this question, we're just gonna cover like all of first edition. All of
Mhm.
in the monster manual.
Yeah.
Um, Back then, my DM would allow us to play Lizardmen if we wanted to.
Okay.
And if you played a Lizardman, you couldn't walk into big towns and forget
Yep. They'll
cities.
be like, get your ass out of here,
Yeah,
scaling
pretty
man.
much.
Creature of the
So
Black Lagoon.
it's like, yeah, you get to play a cool creature, but you will not be able
You
to.
better be a druid or a ranger and survive outside.
Yep, pretty much. And so while it was cool in
Yeah,
certain
I think that
adventures,
had. Go ahead.
oh, no, I was gonna say while it's cool in certain adventures, eventually you have to go into town, and your
Yeah,
characters.
monster races work best in that kind of like if it's going to be an all monster race group
Yeah,
or something like that, or someplace like I mean, like in current fifth edition or Forgotten Realms, someplace like Waterdeep. Waterdeep is such a massively cosmopolitan
diverse
area on
community.
the Sword Coast that they're used to that kind of crazy things.
Yeah.
But you wander into like Hamlet out of Greyhawk or some other little podunk town, they'd be like, "What is this?"
What is this? Like, we're under attack. you know.
Oh man, yeah, I would. If anything happens to Barris in this campaign, I would probably make a bugbear.
Bugbear. Yeah, bugbears are cool. I mean, they're
They're
talking
dope,
about,
dude. Like some of the abilities they have are really, really cool.
yeah, like they're like borderline OP for like fifth edition player
They can
characters
be
right now.
like a bugbear rogue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people are
they're not fucking around.
already making videos that break their playable race and stuff.
See, and that's okay. That's one thing that bugs me about being a DM is sometimes, and I get it because I watch them too to get ideas because I don't get to play a lot.
Yeah,
So when I do, I like to see what's out there and stuff. But it's some of these videos that they put out there and they specifically break character, class, race combos that are just broken. And it's got I don't run into it too much in my group, but my group they have some powerful characters. But my thing is now, okay, you got a powerful character. Well, guess what? Fucking dragons. How about that?
yeah. No, I
I
mean
mean,
yeah,
that's
it
you
just
know,
means that like I
you
like
just have
certain
to learn how to
characters.
up things on the fly.
Yeah, certain characters will start off with like an armor class of 16 or 18.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
it's
tell the
nuts,
player, I'm like, I'm gonna aggro more stuff on you now, right?
right?
Because
You have
the
that
goblins
18,
are
and guess
like
what?
throwing
Four
stuff, and
creatures.
they realize they can't hit you, and then one of the goblins goes, "Get him!" and then they all come and get him, and
Yeah,
now I got
dog pile, son.
advantage and flanking
Yeah.
abilities and all this stuff, and so um, things happen.
There's
So
always a way around it, but it just sometimes it keeps you on your toes as a DM.
yeah, no, it does. And I
You
also like to see what's out there. So if somebody does come across and say, I want to play this, I've seen the video. And so then I'm like, nah,
Yeah.
let's tone down this part and you can have
And
the
that's
rest.
another reason I watch. I'm like, okay, I'm going to see what these combos are and kind of keep that in the back of my mind and have ways that not necessarily counteract it, but just be aware of it.
Yeah.
Try and dampen their effects at least. Because I mean, it's no fun as a dungeon master. It's no fun if you run over the party
No,
just as
it's
much
not.
as it's not really fun if the party is overrunning everything you put in. Like I've had fucking sessions that were just completely derailed by one or two actions, and you're just like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah. What should
Like
have been
I did,
challenging is a cakewalk,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then,
You
then some of
have
those players would be like arrogant. They're just like, this was just too easy. And you're like, oh, it
yeah,
wasn't.
really? How
Okay.
about dragons? That's my answer for it. How about dragons?
I'm gonna drag.
You want easy? Dragon.
We'll see. So this is
Motherfucking
our
cheat.
wrap up here of you know, our monsters from A to C. We're gonna continue this, like I said. The next part is gonna be demons, and we're gonna
Oh
only
yeah.
stay into the content of first edition. So everything else that they've been tacking on over the years, we're not gonna really talk about because we're just keeping it in the content of first edition.
So are
Then
we
after
keeping I'm
what?
sorry, just a question. So the next video, is it going to be demons and devils or
No,
solely dedicated to demons?
no, dude. I mean, I'm gonna look at the
Yeah, I
time
was
on
gonna
this
say
video right
devils.
here.
Devils is quite a section too.
Dude, just for us to go to A to C without
Yeah.
even getting into stuff, this video is like an hour and almost 15 minutes, and it probably will wrap up around that time.
Holy crap. Yeah, that's long.
Yeah, and we're only like addressing like the first part of it. Now we
Yeah,
did cover a
we're not
lot.
going into the regular animals.
Yeah, and we're talking about all the pros and cons, and we're sharing our knowledge of DMs who have played on and off for over what 30, 35 years, something like that.
Yeah, going on 40
Yeah,
years as a
so like
player.
I started playing Dungeons and Dragons at the age of 8 in
Mhm.
1980. So
Okay. I was probably around the same age, so it'd be probably 80 to 81 for me.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's when I started playing. I became a DM at the age of 9 the following year because I got my
Actually,
own
I
box
didn't
set.
see that's one thing I always avoided. I was not very like I did not want to DM. My
Oh,
whole
dude, I
thing was
was
all about
hooked.
playing. No, I always wanted to play. I never wanted. I DM'd a few. I think one of my first sessions, I DM'd for a group in high school that I played with off and on. Mostly like the last Grenadier was a group. I started with my uncles, my uncle Javi, my uncle Mark. They taught me how to play it with AD&D. That's where I started.
Yeah.
And from there, I started playing. I played for a little bit in junior high. There was a guy, two guys, Lejean and Eamon. I started playing with those guys, and we had some adventures. And then a friend of mine, Jason, started playing. Another friend of mine, Mark, started playing, who actually writes his own kickstarts his own first edition modules. It's crazy. But yeah, so I started throughout junior high and a lot in high school. I had a lot of people, probably about a group of probably a dozen players here and there that we played a lot of different campaigns, a lot of different adventures, and I very rarely DM'd. I think one of the first groups I ever dungeon mastered for was one time in high school. We went out to my uncle's house in LA, and it was probably 8, 9 people. We were teenagers. It was my uncle Javi, my friends Angel, Shant, my brother Jason, just a bunch of people that we got together in a big table, and we ran that for one night. But I really didn't start getting into to DMing until fifth edition.
Yeah.
I was always majority of the time I was always a player. And it wasn't until fifth edition I started kind of reading around, and I was like, you know what, this is really fun. And I'd always like created stuff. You know how when you were in high school you did the maps and stuff, and you,
Yeah.
you created your own worlds and that. But I never really put it into play until fifth edition, which is really, it's amazing the stuff they have now, man.
Oh no,
The
it
internet,
is.
a
I
hell of
mean,
a
it really
thing.
is. So we're gonna wrap this up now, people. Like I said, after the demons, we're gonna be dedicating a whole video to devils, and then we're gonna jump back into the D's, and we'll be covering like the dinosaurs and
Dinosaurs.
the
20
dinosaurs, the
some odd
splacer
sections.
beasts, the genies, the dogs, the dolphins, doppelgangers.
What
Then
about dragons?
dragons are going to get their own video, and Eric brought up to
Oh yeah,
me
I
that we
love
should
me a
break it
dragon.
up
Oh
to
yeah,
the two different type of
yeah.
dragons.
Chromatic and metallic.
Yeah, so we're gonna do that, and that will of course will include Bahamut and Tiamat, and
Oh
then after
yeah.
that we go back into the D's again, and I think we won't do an individual video until we get to the giants. Will get their own
Yeah, giants
video.
probably should be their own video. Yeah.
They'll get their own video, and then we'll go through. I don't know, midway through the book. I'm just looking through really quick. Um, a lot of these could, like the Lich could get its own video, but it won't because just the
Ooh,
Lich.
really? You want to do a lich for their own video for
No,
their
we
lich?
wouldn't.
We
These
would
are
not.
things that they just introduced. We're
What
only
about
doing like
lycanthropes?
we're doing videos, except for the dinosaurs because we're just blending them in, but only
Yeah.
on stuff that they dedicated like whole sections to. Multiple
What about
pages.
lycanthropes? Lycanthropes could be a really good single video.
Yeah. All right, we might go that route. I hear you. Sis.
Where
Then
where
we'll add
bears, where
Aragon.
rats?
And I think after the Liquid Brokes, I think that would probably be the last one because
Probably. I don't.
after that, then we just go through the rest, and we could have done like we could break it up and do an undead, but I'm not trying to do it that way. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
that's
go
too. You're all
page
over the
by
place there.
page,
Yeah.
and that's what we're doing. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you really made it to this far to the end, I know we earned a like. Leave a comment below. I will be reading these off to Eric. You have any questions of what it was like to play back then, or anything in, like what would you like to see in fifth edition? What monster race would you play? I would like to see those comments if anybody wants to leave anything. And any final thoughts, Eric?
No, I'm looking forward to the next video because demons. I used to love me a demon back in the day. I used to always want to be, what is it, the Cambions or the Cambions were the half devils, right?
I no, those have demons because that's what
Yeah.
Izu is or Iuz.
I use, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he
Yeah,
started out
he's
as.
yeah, there were some great ones, dude. I mean, my favorite is probably I don't know, I won't ruin it because I don't know if she's in the first one, but I don't think so. But
Well,
she
you know
was
what?
in
We're gonna end it at that, and we will get to there.
Ah
So go watch the next video, people, and I'll catch you later.
take care, guys.